Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mindful Love podcast. My name is Tabitha. I am your host. I'm very excited to have a special guest on today. His name is Tony Endelman. He is an author, a popular self-help blogger, a certified transformational life coach, and certified happiness trainer. He is also one of Dr. Robert Glover's elite certified No More Mr. Nice Guy coaches. Tony's recently released book, The Big Stick, collected and applied wisdom from the teachings of Dr. Robert Glover, encapsulates nearly 40 years of wisdom put forth by Dr. Glover. Tony was born and raised in Omaha, Nebraska, and now lives in New Orleans. His unconventional brand of self-help has been featured in the Huffington Post, YAHOO, Lifehack, Mindvalley, Thought Catalog, Thrive Global, Tiny Buddha, The Good Men Project, and other places. In his coaching business, Tony works with clients both one-on-one and through his group program for men. Welcome, Tony. I am so excited to have you on today.
How's it going? Thanks for having me.
Great. I would love for you to just kind of introduce yourself and maybe talk a little bit about like what you do with men.
Yeah, well, my name is Tony Endelman, like you said. I started off as well, this is a long story. I'll try and condense it. But actually, I started off working in advertising. I worked in advertising
Oh,
for like
really?
for like 15 years and hated every, can I curse on this show?
Sure, go ahead.
I hated every fucking second of it. And yeah, I was kind of stuck in this 9 to 5 world, sitting in an office cubicle, having a boss, doing things I didn't really care about. Always knew that I wanted to do something else, always thought I was meant for more, but I never knew how to get out of that world. I'd just been in it for so long, I felt stuck. And um, I
I love that
actually,
you brought that up because I work with a lot of middle-aged men and they come to me and they're like, I'm sitting
yeah,
in this cubicle and I hate my life and I should love it because I have everything that I was supposed to want finally
yeah,
come and I hate it.
yeah.
Like, what do I do?
Well, what we're told we're supposed to want usually doesn't actually work out and make us happy. Um,
So
but
true.
anyway, you mentioned Tony Robbins earlier when we were talking, and I was so miserable in my life, and I'd been to so many different forms of, I'd been to therapists, psychologists, psychiatrists. I tried a whole bunch of different medications, like nothing really worked for me. And as kind of a last, I don't know if I want to say it was a last resort, but I scheduled a life call, just an introductory call with a guy, a life coach who worked for Tony Robbins.
Oh,
And I have a call with this guy, and he just kind of blew my mind. And it wasn't what he said. It's not like he said anything super profound. It was how he said it. He was kind of a dick, and I loved it. Like, he basically told me to grow some fucking balls, and like,
oh my God, I love it.
and he really just, he gave me a real kick in the ass, and I found it very motivating and inspiring. And circling back to your question, after I got off the phone with that guy, all I could think was, I want to do what that guy does.
Oh, that's
um,
amazing.
yeah, and plus he was probably on, like, some beach somewhere, like talking to me, you know.
Living the
And
dream.
so, and I just thought, man, I've always loved psychology and human behavior, and I've always wanted my own business, and I've always dreamt of just having freedom and doing my own thing. And I just thought, man, I want to do what that guy does. And so I pursued it. I got certified from the Robbins, called the
Oh, did
Robbins.
you?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's called the Robbins Madonis Training Center for
Mhm.
Strategic Intervention. Um, so so again, circling back to your question, I started off as just a life coach.
Mhm.
I had just gotten certified from Tony Robbins, and but the thing is, you get certified and then you're like, okay, now
Now
what?
what?
How the hell am I supposed to get clients?
What do I do next? Yeah.
So I thought, well, I've got 15 years of marketing experience. I know how to build a website. I know how to write. I know how to optimize a website. So I put up a website and a blog, and I started writing very personal essays, and those
Mhm.
essays started getting published various places, and that's how I got my first clients, was just through my writing. But then, around that same time, while I was trying to get this coaching business off the ground, I went through a heartbreak. um,
Is this the one in
uh,
your book
yeah, this is the one I talk about in the
in
introduction
New
to the book.
Orleans? Okay.
Yep. And moving to New Orleans was a big part of like kind of blowing up my life. I now I we're kind of getting a little sidetracked here, but um, I had lost I was living in Omaha, that's where I'm from, and I had lost my father died suddenly and unexpectedly. And he was the picture of health, really. And so if there's anybody I expected to live to be 100, it was my dad. And he just kind of dropped dead at the gym one day while he was exercising. Um, and and that sent me into a real dark depression at first, but ultimately it was a real wake up call for me. It made me realize, like, holy shit, like, what am I doing? Like, I'm just gonna sit in this apartment in Omaha and rot if I don't make some big changes. And life is so unpredictable, I had just learned. And
Yeah.
so I started making some big changes in my life after I lost my father. The first of which was I moved to New Orleans because I'd just fallen madly in love with the city. But anyway, back to the story.
No,
Here I
that's actually, I mean, I think that like we always think of heartbreak as someone who like dumps us or rejects us in romantic relationships. But when I'm working with heartbreak, I'm like, no, heartbreak's losing a parent or it's
oh sure,
losing a
there's
job that you love. Like heartbreak is
yeah, and we
widespread.
can certainly dive deep into heartbreak,
Yeah.
but anyway, I'm trying to get my life coaching business off the ground, and I had just been dumped very cruelly by this woman. And again, the woman I describe in the book. And
Can you tell us a little bit about it for the people who haven't read your book yet? And by the way, I highly recommend that you get the book. It's called The Big Stick, and I
yeah,
started reading it. And at first, I thought, "Oh, I don't think I should read this. I'm a woman." And then I was like, "I have a son. I should 100% be reading this book." And so, tell
yeah,
us a little bit about because it was Tracy, right? The heartbreak.
yeah. Well, let me weave my way
Okay.
there, because
Okay.
this will all come together. Uh, so I'd gotten dumped by this woman. This was right after I'd moved to New Orleans. And again, I was trying to get my life coaching business off the ground at the same time. So anyway, I'm dealing with this heartbreak. And in the past, this wasn't the first woman to unremorsefully toss me from her life. Like, this wasn't the first time this has happened to me. But in the past, I had always just, even though I was heartbroken and sad, I'd always dismissed the woman. Oh, she's crazy. She's a bitch. She's a psycho, which we tend to do that. And that's what I had always done in the past. But this time around, I just thought, okay, this cannot keep happening to me. Like, so I really started examining my own behavior and what was my role in it. And I was like, there's no way I've dated 7 narcissists in a row. It's like, who's the common denominator here?
Right.
Even if they were all crazy narcissists, like, I attracted
Why?
that into my life. So I
Right.
started examining my own behavior, and I really took a deep dive within myself. And um, while I was on that journey, I picked up a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, which is one of the seminal books in men's self-improvement. And the book just blew my mind. It just whacked me upside the head. And so much so that I reached out to the author, Dr. Robert Glover, and um, I ended up going to one of his in-person workshops in Seattle, and I met him and found out that he has certified coaches. And so I, I worked very closely with Dr. Glover. I ultimately became one of his certified coaches. And I also made a really concerted effort to cultivate a relationship with Dr. Glover. So I kept bugging him and pestering him, and eventually he would I would do little projects for him, and but ultimately he became one of my very close friends and the greatest mentor in my life without question. And
Um,
that brings us to my book, The Big Stick. In about 2020, Dr. Glover approached me with this idea of writing a book that encapsulates all the work he's done over his 40-year career. Um, and so that's the book. I wrote it was challenging because I want, and Dr. Glover wanted this too, to write it in my voice
mhm.
and weave in my own experiences and anecdotes, but also, you know, dispense all of Dr. Glover's wisdom. And
Yeah.
so, so that's the
Very
book. It's
funny.
an,
It's very
yeah,
engaging. I wasn't,
thank
yeah,
you.
when I started reading it, I wasn't sure that I would enjoy it. And I was like, I didn't want to put it down, especially when you started telling the story about Tracy. Because I work with a lot of women who are recovering from narcissistic abuse. And I am myself a recovering codependent who no longer dates
Yeah,
narcissists. But like I had to sit down and take a look at myself and go, why do I keep attracting this type of person and why am I so attracted to them? And so I
yeah,
resonated with your story so much because I could see myself in it. Like I was like not as
sure.
Tracy, but on the other side of like,
Yeah, and
oh,
yeah, and if you read No More Mr. Nice Guy, and how Dr. Glover defines the nice guy and nice guy syndrome really is it really is codependency. It's just
100,
um
100%.
yeah,
As I was reading it, I was like, the last person I dated, was what I thought was a nice guy. And I was like, I'm going to finally switch my patterns. The manipulation was worse than with the narcissist. And
yeah,
um, I almost felt more rejected than I ever had because I was like, I expected you to be good, like, and not
yeah. Well,
manipulate me.
nice guy is a misnomer because nice guys aren't actually very nice. They're fundamentally dishonest and manipulative and immature, and they actually think they're doing everything right by trying to please everyone and make everyone happy and meet everyone else's needs. But um, they're but that just it doesn't work. And actually it again it ends up coming across as ultimately being very immature and dishonest and manipulative. And there's a lot of unspoken agreements with strings attached and
So
unspoken
many.
expectations. And we
I
can go
think
on
that
and
was the
on.
hardest thing because at least when I was dating a narcissist, like I knew what to expect. I knew it was coming, right? Like we were upfront
Yeah,
about it. Dating the nice guy, it almost was worse because I was like, I wasn't expecting it from you. And so I
yeah.
love that the way you describe it, because I think
Well,
that
and you know that
doing
the
it.
thing is, a lot of most nice guys, because now I work in my coaching business, I work primarily with nice guys. Almost every single 99% of my clients are nice guys. And they actually are really good guys. They're nice guys. They're nice men. They're kind. They're generous. And but they have this cornucopia of problematic behaviors that kind of fall under the nice guy syndrome umbrella. But the thing is, they don't know any better. They
Right.
just don't know any better. And they don't know that what they're doing is unattractive and unappealing and kind
It's
of
true.
repulsive.
It's
Like they're
so
just,
true.
and I'm not speaking down to anyone because I was the same way, you
Mhm.
know.
Oh no, I
Um,
can say as a woman, I was like the nice woman. I was like, I don't have many needs. I don't have any boundaries. Like, I mean, I was like, I'm the easiest partner. Like, I don't need anything but to love you. And it wasn't really true. I had a lot of needs. I just wasn't expressing them.
right.
And so, and also I wasn't giving my partners the opportunity to meet my needs, which I think is like fundamental in a relationship. We all have to
Absolutely.
know
Yeah.
what our needs are so that we can be successful in meeting them.
Yes.
So,
Correct.
yeah, is that like how can you walk me through how you help them? Because I'm sure a lot of my listeners are probably curious a little bit about your process without, giving away all your secret sauce.
Well, that it's a hard question to answer because a lot of men, most men come to me and say that, right? They say, what do I need to do and how long is this going to take? And I'm like, uh, probably take the rest of your life, because these are, you're, if you're a nice guy and you want to overcome your nice guy syndrome and become a more integrated man, you have to shift your entire life paradigm and change some of your core beliefs and change some behaviors that have been so ingrained in you since you were probably a young child. So, that shit doesn't happen overnight. It's a journey.
Yeah.
Um, and I also don't know that there's, I mean, I've tried the best I can to put together kind of a roadmap, but I don't know that there's some sort of A to Z, like step by step
Okay.
instruction book for this. But what I generally tell guys, this is a pretty good place to start, is number one, start. Um, uh, Here's a couple of things that would be I usually tell guys as a good place to start, and things they can start doing immediately uh, that'll definitely change their lives pretty quickly. Number one is reveal yourself. Start revealing yourself to safe people. So find a coach, find a therapist, find a men's group, but particularly get with other men in particular, uh, and
Can I ask
start.
why? I love that. I just want to like explain why that's important.
Well, number one, we we spend our entire lives trying to gain the affection and approval and attention of women, and that's what's bitten us on the in the ass in the first place. So
Mhm.
when we get with other men, there's no sexual agenda there.
Right.
We're there's no manipulation there. There's no unspoken expectations there. It's just, you know, you can just start revealing yourself without fear of, oh, is she gonna be pissed at me, or how's she gonna react, or is she gonna leave me, or whatever. So
Yeah.
you
Okay.
eliminate that whole thing.
Nice.
Also, most guys, particularly nice guys, are lonely and isolated and do not have a lot of other really good men in their lives. So, men need other men,
Yes, they do.
and
Absolutely.
men, as Dr. Glover likes to say, men need to get out of the fucking nursery and go do guy things with guys. But
Hmm.
um, if you can start revealing yourself to safe people, particularly men, and just start opening up and being you and telling, and sharing things about you, you can start to unravel and overcome a lot of that, what we would call toxic shame, which
Yes.
is sort of a core part of the nice guy syndrome, which is basically the belief that, I am not okay just as I am.
Right.
You start to overcome that when you start revealing yourself to safe people. Um,
Yes, 100%, because it's in that vulnerability, right? And I think like
yeah,
from what I've seen is men aren't taught that being vulnerable is safe,
yeah,
especially like when they tried to be vulnerable about who they are and then they were rejected for it. And so it just kind of like reinforces that it's not safe to be vulnerable with other people.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. And so that's the first thing I would say. Now usually by the time they get to me, they've sort of decided to take that step because
Okay.
they decided to reach out to me and get a coach. Um, but I have a group program as well, so I always try and anybody who reaches out to me, I try and get them to join my group. But so that's the
Talk
primary.
about why that's important. I love that you do group coaching because I do group coaching too, and I just think that there's so much value in it. Can you talk about like why that's so valuable for men specifically? Because I know that I have a lot of my male clients resist the group coaching, and
Yeah.
I just want to like hear your perspective why that's so valuable.
Well, I kind of just touched on that. I mean, number one, there's no, we've spent our entire lives, most of us, trying to gain the affection and attention of women. So when you get into a group scenario, particularly with other men, number one, there's no sexual agenda there. So there's no hidden expectations, there's no manipulation going on. And you can just connect and bond with these other men. And number two, like I already said, most men are, especially in this day and age, are lonely. They're isolated. They don't have good men in their lives. So when
Mhm.
you join a men's group, you immediately become part of a tribe and you immediately have this sense of camaraderie and brotherhood. You also get accurate feedback from other men. So, you know, again, if you come into a group of men and you reveal yourself, particularly you have something you have shame about,
Mhm.
nobody's going to judge you or mock you or criticize you. um here's an example, a really simple example that comes to mind that I'm stealing directly from Dr. Glover. I've heard him tell this story before, but like in one of his men's group there was a guy who was like in his early 40s, African American guy, and this dude just carried around from the time he was 14 years old, he carried around all this shame because when he was 14 years old, he stole a car stereo. And he thought that he was just, since he was 14 years old, he carried this around thinking he was just the biggest loser, piece of shit, horrible person because he stole this car stereo. So finally, in his men's group, he told this story about how when he was 14, he stole a car stereo. And all the other guys were like, what? That's it? Like we all did stupid shit like that when we were kids, And again, it's a silly example in a way, but for this guy, he this guy was able to release this burden of like 25 years of worth of shame he'd been carrying around with him
I
because
love that. Yeah.
nobody had ever given him accurate feedback before. Nobody had ever said to him, dude, don't be silly, man. Like we all did dumb shit like that when we were kids.
It's
And
so true.
so
Yeah, that because I don't think people realize that like it could be something small that creates toxic shame. It's how you register it in your
yeah,
perspective. It doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, I got in a fight and hurt something. Like,
yeah.
it
And
could
and
be something like that.
all this guy needed was like a group of other really good, safe men to go, come on, man, that's crazy. Like we all did dumb shit like that. Like you
Right.
got no reason to feel. So you get more accurate feedback. And then, circling back to your last question, what I would tell guys beyond finding safe people and revealing yourself to safe people, you know, start making your needs a priority. So like, you know, start asking yourself, what do I want? What makes me happy? What are my needs? And then act on it, do it.
Mm-hmm.
Some simple exercises like make a bucket list, you know?
Yep.
Um, Again, kind of cheesy, but it gets guys thinking, oh, what do I want? What's
Right.
important to me? What would make me happy? The other thing I would tell guys is start telling the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Just practice being honest with everyone in your life.
I think that's
And
so important.
yeah, and then learn to let go of attachment to outcome, like if you are going to be honest with somebody, you don't know how they're going to react, and you got to be equally okay with however they react. So let go of attachment to outcome and, learn to soothe yourself. Like nice guy syndrome is an anxiety and shame-based disorder. So learn
Hmm.
how to soothe yourself, learn how to, breathe and get control of your nervous system and, learn how to soothe yourself
Yeah, I think
and,
that's
and start setting
awesome
boundaries,
advice.
start telling people, no, that's not acceptable. That's not acceptable.
Yeah.
No, I need you to do it this way. No, this doesn't work for me. So that's about 5 or 6 things guys can start doing immediately.
Oh, no, I think that that's great. I think that's great for men and women, especially people pleasing women who think,
Oh
telling
yeah,
people
they're
what they
nice
want to
girls
hear.
too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, it's not nice to tell people what you think they want to hear instead of being honest, because it's just lying. And like people
Yeah.
pleasing is basically just lying. And it's not okay to lie to people. And like it just doesn't build trust and it certainly doesn't build vulnerability.
No, and I mean, nice guys they're so afraid to start telling the truth, but it's like, yeah, and understandable. It can be scary and uncomfortable, and you could have some uncomfortable conversations, but it's better than living a life of lies and deceit.
Oh, totally. Yeah, no, I
And
totally
people
agree.
actually respect you more when you tell the truth,
They
which
do.
you come to
They
find out.
do. And then they'll be honest with you. And the thing is I think
Yeah.
like lying comes from that fear of rejection, but it's like, they're only going they're already rejecting you because you're not being who you really are. So, you're already setting people up to reject you when you lie to them because they're not really accepting
Yeah, it,
you.
it totally is a fear rejection.
Hmm.
It's I mean, lying is generally the only reason people lie is to either protect themselves or protect someone else. So,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. I love this. I love how you talk about the masculine and feminine balance. And I was just talking to another a female coach who works with single ladies looking to date. And we were just talking about how like you can't show up in your masculine if you want to attract a masculine man. If you're showing up in your masculine, you're going to get a feminine man who is going to not give you what you really want. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I really liked that part of the book and how you describe it.
yeah, you're right. And this is what I have found to be a big reason that so many relationships, modern relationships in particular, go right down the shitter, is because
Yep.
is because we have women are constantly in their masculine and men have become so feminized. And we're talking about energetic states here. I know this is like a hot button issue.
Oh no, I
I,
always mean it in energy systems too.
yeah.
Like you can have a
Um,
very you can have a same-sex couple who's in their masculine and feminine energy. So yeah, this
yeah.
is energetics.
Well,
Is that
let
what
me let me put it in this context because this seems to be the issue that plagues a lot of men, particularly men that I work with, which is that women today are so the easiest way and the easiest way to describe, I think, masculine and feminine energy is that the masculine does and the feminine is done too. The masculine penetrates the woman, the masculine penetrates the world, and the woman wants to be nurtured and cared for and done to and blissed, right?
hmm
That's kind of the simplest way to, but today, in a lot of modern relationships, so women are in their masculine energy all day long, which nothing wrong with that. It's great, right? Women are out there kicking ass. They've got jobs, they're running companies, they're getting shit done. Like, that's awesome. But it's still kind of against their biological wiring. And when they get home at night from being in their masculine all day long, most women want to revert to their feminine, and they want a masculine presence in the home to consciously lead them into their feminine, because a lot of women aren't very good at making that switch on their own
Yeah.
from their masculine to their feminine. The
Uh-huh.
problem is that women are in their masculine all day long, and then they get home and they come home to a guy who's basically a people pleasing, approval seeking doormat of a nice guy,
Mm-hmm.
a feminine man,
Yep.
basically.
Pretty much. Yeah. That describes it.
And so the woman gets home. She doesn't want to be in her masculine anymore, but she's basically forced to continue to be in her masculine. And she's got to continue to set the tone and take the lead and make decisions. And, that's the masculine's job. The masculine should be setting the tone and taking the lead in the relationship. This is why, it's like that old joke. A relationship is just two people arguing about what to eat for dinner until one of them dies. This is why women are like, just make a fucking decision. I
Right.
want you to decide,
So
because they've been in
true.
their masculine all day. They don't want to come home and continue to be in their masculine. They
Yeah.
want a masculine presence at home,
It's
and
so,
they're not getting
yeah.
that.
No, they're not. And it's interesting because I also find that they don't let their partner be that because they're afraid of the masculine energy, probably because they've had somebody who was manipulative and narcissistic in their lives. And so
That's
they're
very true.
afraid of how do I submit and be in that space of surrender and not be lied to and taken advantage of.
Yes, and it's our job as men or the masculine presence to consciously lead them into their feminine, their higher feminine.
Mhm.
So it's our job to be in our higher masculine, you
Oh, can you
know?
talk about that? Because I liked how you described it in your book, and I'm not sure people know what that means.
Yeah, I mean, let's pull out that polarity chart. Yeah, I mean, when you have a man who's in his higher masculine, so he's masterfully penetrating the world and his woman, you know, um, he's
I know so many
internally
women
va-
who will be offended by that statement, but I know that women who understand are going to appreciate what you say. Like, because I get what you're saying energetically about being in that penetration and
yeah.
receiving thing. But it's
No,
so,
he's doing it
yeah,
masterfully and lovingly and
right.
consciously,
Yeah,
he's internally validated. He's centered in his own body. You know, he gives to the world even if the world doesn't give back, right? And then you have a woman who's in her higher feminine. She's welcome and open to this, to being led and penetrated masterfully by a masculine presence. She's open and she reciprocates love, right? She's attracted to this masculine consciousness. When you have a man in his higher feminine and his I'm sorry, a man in his higher masculine and a woman in her higher feminine, that's magical,
it
right?
is.
But when you've got a guy in his lower masculine, so he's rigid, he's angry, he's dominating, he's abusive, he's aggressive, he's rageful, you know, these are the kinds of that's like what you were describing.
Yeah.
Like, this is why women might be afraid to
Hmm.
revert to their feminine, because they've been with men in the past who are in their lower masculine, who are
Yeah.
angry and vindictive and abusive and aggressive.
Totally. I love that description between the two because I think that that's where we get confused, especially as women, on the difference between being in the higher masculine and then the
Yeah.
lower masculine is what you refer to it. Yeah, I love that.
Yeah. And then there's lower feminine too, which is like you're feeling needy, you're feeling insecure, you're taking things personally, you withdraw, you know, and a lot of times, again, women can often be in their lower feminine,
Oh,
and
yeah.
it's our job as conscious men to help them out of that place into their higher feminine. And also, a lot of men nowadays are often in their lower feminine, you know. A lot of
Yes.
men a lot of men are needy and insecure and play the victim, and so my point is we want to get to this higher place, you
Hmm.
know and if you have a man in his higher masculine and you have a woman in her higher feminine, that's a really magical relationship,
Very. Can you
and you
describe
can
the higher
also,
feminine? Because we
yeah,
talked about the lower feminine. I'd love to hear your description of the higher feminine.
again, the higher feminine is open to being led and penetrated by a man in his higher masculine. Someone in a higher feminine is she reciprocates the love that is received. She's like magnetically attracted to this higher masculine presence. You know, even when she's hurt or feeling unloved, she stays open.
Mhm.
That's kind of the higher feminine. And again, the lower feminine would be needy, insecure, feeling victimized, taking things personally, withdrawing. So again, both of us, men and women, we want to be in that higher place.
Mhm.
And if you want to co-create magic in your relationship, you both should be in that higher place. And also, you can switch those roles around consciously, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The man can say to the woman, hey, why don't you take the wheel? And she, can be okay with that, and usually is okay with it, as long as she knows she can give the wheel back to him.
So true. I think that's the thing that is, I think that's where people really need to have healthy communication. It's like, when can I give the wheel back? I'm fine taking it, but I also need to know that I don't have to own it for life. So like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, but I don't know. I understand it's kind of like esoteric. um, but I have found that, like, in my book, there's like this masculine feminine polarity chart where it's like four quadrants, and it shows you the characteristics of the higher masculine, the higher
oh,
feminine, the
great.
lower masculine, and the lower feminine. And I have found, like, just having that chart handy is really useful as a guide to keep us conscious, particularly us men, because we can look at that chart and go, okay, where am I? Am I in my higher masculine right now? Or am I am I being an asshole and angry and vindictive? Am I in my lower masculine? Am I
Yeah.
being a needy victim? Am I in my lower feminine? You know, it keeps us conscious of where we are and where we should be.
I think those kind of charts are helpful because most of the time we don't know, we're just unaware. And then if
Yeah.
our attachment is being threatened, then we go into the lower state without even realizing it. So having a chart is like super helpful. So I'll put a link if you have one in the show notes so that people can access it if you have
Well, you
one.
can link to the book. I don't
Okay,
know if there's a
perfect.
link right to the chart,
Okay.
but but anyway, yeah, I have found all that stuff to be really helpful, and I have seen it play out over and over and over and over again in my clients' relationships. And when my clients you know, start learning how to harness, learning just how to be in their higher masculine, and they start setting the tone and taking the lead and making decisions, but in a really loving and conscious way,
Yeah.
they're the women in their lives light up and their relationships begin to flourish.
very
And
true.
the reason their relationships are on the brink in the first place is because they somewhere along the way turned into these approval seeking, people pleasing, passive aggressive, nice guy doormats.
Mhm.
And the women don't want that.
No, they don't. But it's funny because I think we've raised them like that because we've had so many single moms out there who were so afraid of raising a abusive man that we almost demasculated our sons. And now
I
we're,
Yeah, I don't disagree. Well, like I said, a lot of us guys don't know any better,
yeah,
right? Because
yeah.
we were raised that way. I mean, basically, us guys, most of us guys were from the moment we were from the moment we escaped from the birth canal, we were taught how to please women, you know?
Hmm.
Our mother, was our first the first person to teach us how to please women. And then most of us had female teachers all throughout school. So we learned how to please women in school.
Hmm.
On top of that, we see, you know, on top of that, we watch modern, television shows and movies and these cheesy romantic comedies, which I'm a sucker for, but they do not reflect real life.
No,
So,
they don't. Yeah.
you know,
They don't. And they're
uh,
just made for entertainment. They're not a guide to how to live or how to have a romantic life, right? I was just talking to one of my clients about this. I'm like, oh no, they're just for entertainment. If we can all put them back into the box where they belong, is it's just entertainment,
well, yeah, but
not real.
who sits us down and nobody sits us down and tells us that.
Yeah.
We have to learn the hard way,
Yes, that's true.
We
Yeah.
have to we have to we have to show up on the girlfriend's lawn with the boombox and the flowers and then get the cops called on us to realize, oh, that's not how you win love. And love isn't actually something you win in the first place.
I
We have to learn, that attraction and all this stuff that is part of um, you know, I hate to say winning over, um, but creating attraction is not what we see in movies and in TV shows.
No, it really isn't. Yeah, I think that it's just entertainment. And I think we just have to remember that and put that in the box where it belongs and understand that like one of the things I work with is attachment styles a lot. And I
Yeah.
see people go, oh, but this is my soulmate. I'm like, no, 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 no. That's your attachment style kicking into full gear right now. That's
Sure.
like feeling like you're gonna die without the person. That's not good. Like that's
It's
not a secure
terrible. No,
attachment
it's
style.
terrible. But where did they even get that term soulmate from? Fucking movies and TV.
Well, if you look on, I mean, just on like the whole social media and celebrities and things like that, we're told like all over the place, everywhere that you have
Well,
a
yeah,
soulmate who's
sure.
supposed to complete you.
Well, yeah, and where did that phrase come from? Jerry Maguire, when
Right.
Tom Cruise said, "You complete me" to Renee Zellweger, he fucked everything up for all of them.
So true. Darn it, Tom Cruise.
I mean, no, no, and we struggle to look at that objectively because not only can another person, like, nobody can complete you or make you happy or meet your needs, you know. Um, Another person cannot do that. Only you can do that. But
Absolutely.
also, like, we forget to, you know, we forget to also acknowledge that not only can another person not do that, like another person doesn't want to do that. Like, what it
Yeah.
is such an enormous burden to place on another person.
It is such an enormous burden to put on someone to like, well, one, to guess what you need. And this is what I always tell
Sure.
people. I'm like, that's not fair to do to your partner, is to make
Yeah.
them guess what you need. Like, that's actually really unkind and unloving.
Yeah. Which circles back to start making your needs a priority. Start telling the truth.
Yeah.
Like a happy, healthy relationship is the sum of two happy, healthy individuals who have their own lives,
Totally.
and contribute to each other's happiness.
Yes, I love that word contribute because I think that we forget that the relationship is this contribution of two whole humans coming together to build a life together. So I have a question for you. Like, so I work with a lot of single women who are looking to meet more conscious men. Where do you have some like dating advice for the woman who's like, I like what this guy is teaching, and like, how do we meet more men like that?
Um, you know, I I hate to say this because I do work with a lot of guys on their dating skills. I have no dating advice. It is such a shit show out there. Dating sucks. I don't know what to tell you. Uh, um,
Why is that? Because I hear that from women and men, and then everyone wants to get divorced so they can go dating, and I'm like, no, it is a shit show. Don't do it.
well, I can see why people want to get divorced too,
Yeah,
because I don't know why people get married in the first place. That's just me, though.
yeah.
Um, Marriage is kind of insane, in my opinion. Um, and I'm a hopeless romantic. I love love. I love having a partner. But marriage, I don't get. Um, all right, dating advice. Geez. Get off the apps,
Yeah.
first of all, because the men that you meet on the apps are likely to be men who do not have the confidence or the social skills to get out into the real world and meet people in person.
Oh, I
Uh,
love that
they're
perspective.
probably the kind of guys. Unfortunately, there are a lot of them, but they're probably the kind of guys who don't really have a life and they're just sitting at home, scrolling through their fucking apps, you know.
Oh,
And
I
so
love that
I would say
perspective.
to both men and women, get off the apps, get out of the house, go
Hmm.
interact with people in real life.
Hmm.
Um, I would say to you know to your listeners, stop. I mean, put the emphasis on going and doing things that you love to do, because then you're putting yourself in a position to meet more like-minded people.
Yeah, it's
Um,
interesting because I did hear on a book I was reading, it was like women keep going to yoga retreats expecting to meet available men, but that's not where they're gonna find them. They're like they're someplace else. They're not like at the feminine stuff if you want. Like, I mean, not like that they're not there, but like the chance there's gonna be like 80 women and 20 guys. So like the odds are not in your favor. But like so
yeah,
where do
yeah.
where
I
do guys
mean,
hang out who are conscious?
yeah. I actually, yeah, I actually skipped my hot yoga class today to do this podcast.
Oh, thank you.
But the other thing I would say is this: like, I, you may meet, you, you may meet, you may go dating, and you may meet a guy or several guys who fit the more feminine, nice guy profile. And what I would say to you is don't write them off, tell them, because again, most of us guys don't know any better. We
Yeah,
think we're doing it right. We think you want the nice guy who will, try and do everything to please you and make you happy. And, so, if you meet a guy like that, it doesn't mean he's a bad guy. And it doesn't mean he can't change. Like, tell him, dude, you need to make some decisions. Like, dude, read No More Mr. Nice Guy. Like, I need you to step it up. Like, if you tell us that, if you tell guys that, they'll work on it.
that's really good
I mean,
insight.
because we're not mind readers, you know.
Right.
So I would say, yeah, don't ignore red flags, but also like don't instantly write off a nice guy. Like, it doesn't mean he's not a man, and it
Yeah.
doesn't mean he's not a good person. It just means maybe he just doesn't know any better, and you need to fucking push him in the right direction.
Yeah, that's not, yeah, I love that idea of like being like, oh, this is this book that I would really like us to like understand because this is really what is important to me.
But as far as like general dating advice, I don't know. It sucks out there. It's terrible. Um, we men act crazy and you women act crazy, and it's just terrible behavior on both sides.
Oh
And
yeah.
uh, I would say, you know, get off the apps before. That's the first thing I would do. Get off the apps.
That's what I always tell my clients. I'm like, they're like, well, I downloaded the apps because my like second cousin twice removed met their soulmate on the apps. And I'm like, yeah, let's just stay off the apps and go do what you love. And then you'll
Yeah,
meet the
let's see
person on the path.
how long your second cousin twice removed
I know,
relationship lasts.
right? This has been a great conversation, and I'm gonna have to wrap it up. But I want to ask you the question I ask all my guests: if you were on a deserted island and you could only bring one book with you, what book would it be?
Wow. Um, Probably. Oh, geez. Um, that's a really hard question to answer, but the book that probably something by David Sedaris, um, like Naked or Me Talk Pretty One Day, or um, probably a David Sedaris book.
Okay, I've never read anything by him. Okay, I'll have to look it up.
Um, yeah,
Nice.
let's go with
Great.
that.
Well, how do people find you? And how do they get in touch with you if they're interested in learning more about what you do?
Best place to go would be just my website, tonyendelman.com. You can find everything on there. You can find my books. You can schedule a free call with me. You can read my blog. Yeah, everything. You can find everything on there.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being on today, Tony. I really enjoyed this conversation. And
Thank you
I'll
so
put all
much.
your contact information in the show notes.
Wonderful. Thanks for having me.